A nation is split in two, and the world is about to witness one of the most complex, controversial, and devastating conflicts of the 20th century. But this wasn't just a civil war. It was a massive proxy war. A high-stakes game where superpowers back smaller combatants to advance their own strategic interests without engaging in a direct, world-ending confrontation. The story begins on May 7th, 1954, at a French base called Dien Bien Phu. Vietnamese forces under General Von Nguyen Giap pull off a stunning victory, crushing the French and ending nearly a century of colonial rule in Indochina. This vacuum of power immediately draws the eyes of the United States. On June 1st, a covert operation known as the Saigon Military Mission is launched under U.S. Air Force Colonel Edward Lansdale. Its goal? Psychological warfare and paramilitary activities to prop up the regime of South Vietnamese President Ngo Dinh Diem. By July, the Geneva Accords effectively divide the country at the 17th parallel. While the Accords claim this is not a permanent political boundary, it quickly becomes exactly that, North versus South. As the years pass, tensions boil over. President Diem's autocratic and violent crackdowns on the Buddhist majority lead the U.S. to withdraw its support. On November 2nd, 1963, Diem is assassinated by his own generals in a coup carried out with the tacit approval of U.S. officials. At this stage, there are 16,000 U.S. personnel in Vietnam, and the death toll is rising. Then comes August 5th, 1964. Reports emerge of a North Vietnamese torpedo boat attack on U.S. destroyers in the Gulf of Tonkin. President Lyndon B. Johnson uses this to push the Gulf of Tonkin resolution through Congress. It authorizes the president to take all necessary measures to repel attacks. Years later, we would find out the sonar operators might have just been imagining things, but the fuse was already lit. U.S. troop levels surged to 23,000. Inside the military, there is a tug-of-war over strategy. General William Westmoreland favors a strategy of attrition, essentially trying to outkill the enemy. However, a 1966 study called Provn argues this is counterproductive and suggests focusing on the stability of the rural population instead. U.S. commanders dismiss the study. By now, 185,000 U.S. troops are in country. Everything changes on January 30th, 1968, during the Tet New Year holiday. North Vietnamese and Viet Cong forces launched the Tet Offensive, hurling 85,000 troops against cities and military bases across the South. Militarily, the North suffers staggering losses, casualty rates near 60%. Westmoreland sees it as a sign of their desperation. But the American public sees something else. They see a war with no end in sight. On February 27th, CBS anchor Walter Cronkite tells millions of viewers that Vietnam is likely to end in a stalemate. President Johnson reportedly remarks, "If I've lost Cronkite, I've lost Middle America." The morale at home and on the front lines continues to crumble. In March 1968, the horrific My Lai massacre occurs, where U.S. troops kill as many as 500 unarmed villagers. The attempted cover-up only fuels the fire. By November 1969, millions of Americans take to the streets in the largest public protests in U.S. history to date. Tragedies like the 1970 Kent State shooting, where National Guardsmen kill 4 unarmed students, only catalyzed the anti-war movement further. Finally, on January 27, 1973, the Paris Peace Accords are signed. U.S. troops are to withdraw within 60 days. On March 29th, the last U.S. military unit leaves Vietnam. The final toll is staggering. 58,000 U.S. troops, over 1.2 million North and South Vietnamese soldiers, and as many as 2 million civilians dead. The war's final act comes on April 29, 1975. American radio broadcasts a coded message. The temperature in Saigon is 105 degrees and rising, followed by the song White Christmas. This is the signal for Operation Frequent Wind, the emergency evacuation of the city. The next morning, North Vietnamese tanks roll into downtown Saigon. and the South surrenders unconditionally. Vietnam was a defining example of a proxy war, but it was far from the only one. Proxy wars have a long, dark history. The Byzantine Empire used them to stoke hostilities within rival nations. During World War I, Britain and France supported the Arab revolt against the Ottoman Empire. The Spanish Civil War became a testing ground for Nazi Germany and Italy on one side, and the Soviet Union on the other. During the Cold War, as nuclear arsenals grew, proxy wars became the acceptable way for superpowers to compete for global influence. The Soviets and Chinese backed the North in Vietnam to limit American influence. In the 1980s, the tables turned in Afghanistan. After the Soviet Union invaded to install a communist government, the U.S. supplied Islamic guerrillas with weapons and equipment. The cost of that war eventually crippled the Soviet Union and contributed to its downfall. This cycle continues into the 21st century. In Yemen, the Houthi movement, backed by Iran, clashes with government forces supported by Saudi Arabia. Following the 2022 invasion of Ukraine, the U.S. and NATO have acted as third-party supporters for Ukraine, while China and Iran have supported Russia. But why use proxies? It's a strategic choice to avoid direct warfare, but it carries massive moral and strategic risks. These conflicts often facilitate the rise of dictatorships when a surrogate's goals don't align with democratic values. They risk widening local conflicts as weapons are lost or sold to other militant groups. Perhaps most tragically, the constant flow of support from third parties reduces the incentive for peace. It encourages surrogates to keep fighting, often resulting in widespread famine, displacement, and cultural devastation. Despite these risks, the sponsorship of proxy wars remains high. As major powers continue to seek influence without the risk of traditional, direct warfare, the shadow of the proxy war continues to hang over the world.